Okay, folks, it is 6:34, Monday, December 18th, and we'll call the Board of Selectmen meeting to order. I'll start with our usual three announcements. This meeting is being recorded by Cape Ann TV Access Corporation for future broadcast. The meeting is being filmed by volunteers from Cape Ann TV. Meeting's being taped by Board of Selectmen, no, not by the Board of Selectmen Secretary, by our FinCom Secretary, Gail. For accuracy in minutes, anyone else who is recording the meeting is asked to notify the chair at this time. And then lastly, all members of the board and people in the audience are asked to turn off or silence their cell phones at this time. So, ordinarily we have an item number 0 on the agenda, which is to ask if anybody has any comment that they want to make prior to starting into our regular agenda items. Not seeing any, we will move to actually item number 0.1. No, I'm busted.
0.5.
All right, we have a special event tonight, which is a retirement recognition for our town clerk, Denise Samuelchuk. So, Denise, if you could come on up here.
Come on, Jim.
Okay, well, so Denise has been 6 years our town clerk, and 2 years as an assistant town clerk, and 2 years as the Board of Selectmen and inspector clerk, and 10 years in town, as an employee in town. And we are very grateful for your steady hand at all of our elections and at the town clerk's office. I will just say that one of my favorite memories is of Alan Wilson on April Fool's town hall meeting, annual town meeting, telling everybody that he was resigning effective immediately, and that according to some esoteric passage in state law, that meant that the town clerk had to take over. And there was this awesome look of shock tinged with horror. And he really delivered it quite well. It took us all a minute or two to realize, oh no, that's not the case. But by then, Denise was in a state of shock. And I really did. Anyway, and I've been very grateful for your presence, and we'll miss you in the office. Hope to see you around from time to time, knocking on doors and stuff. So I'm going to give you an opportunity, please, to come up and say hello and thank you, and anything you might wish.
I guess I could start with it's been an honor and a privilege to be the town clerk and serve the citizens of Manchester. There are many people to thank. All of my election workers. You can't run an election or a town meeting without all the workers. Alan Wilson, who's got to be the best moderator. We're really fortunate. And so it's been a pleasure to work with Alan. And Pamela Florence here, my assistant. And I'm sure she's going to look forward to new and modern things in the office. Sure it'll move forward nicely. And that's it. I've enjoyed it very much.
So we have, no, you should stay right there, yeah. We do have a couple things to present to you. First, why don't we do the chair?
And then you can sit down.
Yeah. But we will not be done with you yet. So, here is Madam Chair, which is inscribed with your name and dates of your employment.
That's in case you want to pass it along to someone.
And we also have,
Make yourself comfortable. From the Board of Selectmen, thank you so much. We appreciate your time and your energy and helping us move into the next century with electronic voting. Find a Hall and Emsley truck to haul it with.
so we also have Brad Hill here tonight. So Brad, if you'd like to step in.
Well, I wanted to come tonight, first of all, to say thank you on a personal level. You and I have worked very well together whenever I've had any constituent needs that needed to be addressed in the town clerk's office. You were always there, not only for my office, but for the constituent. But I also wanted to come on behalf of the state, because although she does a lot of work on the local level, whether it be taking care of local elections, she also takes care of state elections. She also takes care of the federal elections. And she has done that with honor, without any glitches that I'm aware of, any major glitches that I'm aware of. But more importantly, the other day I was talking to a couple of your colleagues in the town hall, and we were talking about the fact that you were going to be leaving us. And they were quite upset about it, because you are going to be sorely, sorely missed by the people that you work with. And two particular issues or things came up that I remembered from that conversation. One of them was the fact that you have such a great sense of humor. And I was told by Jenny that whenever the town hall needs a laugh, all we needed to do was go to the town clerk's office, and she would bring a smile to anybody's face that walked in there, either through conversation or through her humor. But more importantly, what I remember the employees telling me was the heart that you have for this community, and the love that you have for this community, and the citizens that you served for 10 years. You showed it. We appreciated it. I can assure you, ladies and gentlemen, when we get phone calls at our level, usually they're not the greatest of phone calls. Usually somebody's upset with us, or somebody's upset with the town. And you handle that with the utmost professionalism. So I am so proud to be here tonight on behalf of your colleagues, my colleagues, to offer this citation to you with thanks. It's from our House of Representatives. It says, "Be it hereby known to all that the Mass House of Representatives offers sincere congratulations to you in recognition of your 10 years of dedicated service to the town of Manchester by the Sea and 6 years of dedicated service as town clerk." It says the entire membership extends its very best wishes and expresses the hope for future good fortune and continued success. It's given this 18th day, December 2017, at the State House. It's signed by our Speaker Bows. And again, it's offered by your State Rep, Brad Hill. Thank you for a job well done, and on behalf of the citizens of Manchester by the Sea, thank you.
Pass that over to Bruce.
And as usual, I will hand the mic off to my colleague from the Senate, Senator Bruce Tarr, if you would like to come forward. He also would like to offer his congratulations.
Well, thank you very much, Brad, and good evening, and thank you to the Board of Selectmen for letting us know that we were going to recognize you tonight, Denise. I'm very happy to be here along with Brad and everyone here, and I know so many more here in the community, to thank you for all that you have done for the town, and particularly for the town government, and for the pivotal role that you've played here in Town Hall. Because I think we all know that, and I think Brad was alluding to this as I walked in, that you are one of those touchstones that everyone reaches out to when they have an issue with town government. You're one of those people that has been there willing to deal with just about everything that comes through the door, keeps track of everything, and really has been one of those people that makes us all feel good about town government in Manchester by the Sea. And I know that you've done a stint here as town clerk, and I would just focus on that for a minute, because town clerks in our communities play very special roles, because you are the collector and the repository of information. It's sensitive information, it's important information, but you also do something that's very important to Brad and I, and that is that you run municipal elections and state elections and every other election. And there is nothing more important to the integrity of our democratic process than having elections that people can believe in, to believe that they're properly run, that they allow everyone to cast their vote and have their voice in our democracy, and to do so in a way that's efficient and fair and does itself have integrity, and you have done that. And we know that that isn't easy. You know, we know that particularly when we have a large turnout election or one that has a number of different ballot questions or things of that nature, that your job becomes that much more complicated, but you've done it. And you've done it in a way that gives us faith in the process, and that is something that I think can never and should never be overlooked, that without the work that you do, and I know that it's not always glamorous, and I know it's tedious, without that work, our democracy would suffer, and you've not let that happen, and so we're very, very appreciative of that, in addition to all of the other things that you've done here as a real shining star for people here in Manchester. So things continue to pile up down here at this end of the table, and I think that's very appropriate. But I just wanted to come and add my thanks for, again, the role that you have played, for being one of those key people here at Town Hall, for making sure that our elections are run properly, and for making us all feel good about the experience that we get when we come here. So from myself and my colleagues, I have a citation from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, from the State Senate, and it reads, "Be it known that I hereby extend congratulations to Denise Samelchuk in recognition of your dedicated service and commitment to the town of Manchester by the Sea." And this is given with thanks and appreciation and admiration for the work that you've done and the role that you've played in all of our lives. So thank you and congratulations.
I think we're going to take a quick stand up for a photograph. How about that, all of us?
And the clerk for 7. I don't know where they got the information, but that's okay. Stand on this side.
Yeah, when I get Bruce and Brad in.
We need
We need a
big
bigger
ones.
corner, yeah.
Want me to sit down?
No, you stay right where you
You
are.
stay right where you are, exactly. As long as it's not the weeping willows, we're all set. They fall over fast.
Good.
Yeah, that to happen.
It's a busy time.
Mary Ann, you could play yourself. I've got all my stuff on here.
It was quite a pile.
Thank you very much.
Oh, it's a
Really wasn't.
She's gonna leave this chair here in the corner and go back.
So are we going to do a public hearing and then go into?
We will do the public hearings first, and then
Right,
first we're going to...
And then we'll get, we probably won't get anything done in
We should get 1 and 2 done easily.
Oh, yeah, because we can do them all at once.
Yeah.
Okay, folks, we're going to get moving along, and Brad, I believe, had something he wished to say here, so...
So thank you, Mr. Chairman, and through you to the members of the board. While we were here tonight, we just wanted to say, first of all, Happy Hanukkah and Merry Christmas to everyone, but more importantly, we came to say thank you for the partnership that we've had this past year. We've accomplished quite a bit together, whether it be money for seawalls or dredging, or making sure monopoles didn't get erected here in Manchester by the Sea. We could not have done what we did had it not been for the partnership of this board and the town administrator, who on a couple of these issues literally had a red line to our offices, and we were speaking on a regular basis. These things can't happen without a good partnership, and we wanted to let you know how much we appreciate the work that you do in the partnership that we have with you. And I don't know if you wanted to just continue.
I would just say more of the same. We appreciate the fact that we don't have to wait to talk to each other at a Board of Selectmen breakfast for the region, although we certainly enjoy those, or for any particular occasion. We really prize the fact that we hope and we think that all of you know that you can call us at any time, that we can talk about things whenever they arise, and that we have the kind of partnership that allows that continued exchange of information and continued work effort. And we think we're particularly happy, not think, we are particularly happy about the results that has delivered for the people that we represent in this community. And we certainly have faced our challenges. It was a long fight to get dredging money and some seawall money, but persistence paid off. But in addition to persistence, collaboration paid off. And we're always on the same page, and I think that's very helpful in chasing opportunities from the federal and state governments. And that is something that both Brad and I are very much thankful for in the way that we collaborate with you and your willingness to partner with us at every opportunity. So it seems like a good time of year as we say thanks for a lot of things, to say thank you to all of you.
Mr. Chairman, could I also hope that in the year to come, that both of these gentlemen will take a great interest in 127 painting of lines on, because it's a safety issue for everybody, not just us elderlies. Well, I've been working on this out of your two offices for some time now, and the transportation department doesn't seem to be very interested in us, but it really, it's a serious matter. This is not surface stuff. This is very important for safety.
We actually have had a conversation with the Department of Transportation, and I think they now recognize loud and clear that something needs to be done, and I'm hopeful in the spring that we'll start.
I hope so too. Thank you.
So, Brad and Bruce, we really do appreciate the help that you've given us over the past years. It's been invaluable. The town has benefited enormously from your attention, and we always appreciate you, especially coming around to little events like this and giving that extra touch. It's really nice.
Light those candles.
Okay, we're going to hustle along, see if we can catch ourselves back up here.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move that we open the public hearing for the license renewals as listed in our agenda.
All right, can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Common vittlers licenses. We have 22 of them. I'm going to read through these very briefly, and we can approve them as a block. Foreign Affairs, DBA Black Arrow. Number 2, Cape Ann Stores, DBA Allen's Pharmacy. Emerald Bailey Post 113, American Legion. Alley's Beach Street Cafe. Braga Donuts, Fours, Inc., Captain Dusty's, 60 Beach Street location, Neighborly Restaurant Group, DBA Callas, OPPL LLC, DBA Superfine, Crosby's Marketplace, Essex County Club, First Parish Church, Essen, Manchester Fitness LLC, Manchester Bath and Tennis Club, Manchester Community Center, Bravo by the Sea, Seabreeze Variety, that's Richdale's, Sacred Heart Parish Hall, Singing Beach Club, The Landing at 7 Central, and Old Corner Inn. So we'll take these ones first. Any comments from the board on these licenses? Questions from the public? Okay. Now, we're not actually going to approve these until we come out of the public hearing. So I'm going to move on to the miscellaneous license renewals. We have the Old Corner Inn for an inn holder's license, the Essex County Club lodging house license, Junie Van Dyke Farrell lodging house license, Manchester Auto Body, a used car dealer's license, Landing at 7 Central is an entertainment license, Foreign Affairs has an entertainment license, and Edward B. Cushing has a private livery. Questions or comments from the board on these?
Nothing here.
Questions or comments from the public on those? All right. Get a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman, that we approve the 2018 common victual license applications and the miscellaneous license renewals for 2018 as presented.
Sounds reasonable to me. Can I get a second?
Second.
Any discussion from the board? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
Before we go on from licenses, I just, I think I see that in the last meeting, we did do the liquor license for Superfine. Superfine presently has a liquor license, but they have been closed since the Sunday before Thanksgiving. There's a sign on the window saying that they have water problems, but anyone who has a liquor license in town and is going to be closed for more than 30 days is supposed to notify the liquor licensing authority. So I would ask the town to please make sure to send them a letter and find out their intent, and find out if they are indeed going to continue to stay closed. They did apply for a liquor license and have a new one for 2018, but it's fast approaching 30 days.
Okay. Now, my understanding is that they are trying to repair and reopen, and it's been taking them longer than they had hoped, but we do not have a formal letter from them stating that. All right, public hearing.
I'll make a motion that we open the public hearing on the request from National Grid to install 22 foot of 3-inch secondary conduit in the public way on Hidden Ledge Road.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Good evening.
Hey, Peter.
Good evening, Peter Glenn, 44 River Street, in Beverly, Massachusetts, representing National Grid tonight with this petition. Homeowner at number 2 Hidden Ledge Road wanted to upgrade their service. I think they're expanding their house and upgrading everything at the house. And in order to do that, the service was directly buried out in the main street, and we had no way of getting at it. So this is why we're installing a handhole. I did take a photo to indicate where the handhole will be approximately. The truck was there. I couldn't do too much about that. But, that goes right over to a handhole on the lawn, which is adjacent to a tree right in the front yard there.
Okay. So, late in the year to be cracking the road, you won't be able to patch it up for real.
So, March 15th, right?
Yeah, so you'll be coming back then? Or is it your intent to do the work? What's the plan?
The past practice, I think last year, we asked, and the DPW director in the town said, no, we couldn't open the it's too late to open the streets right now, you know, because it snows or anything, it'll be wide open, so. I'm sure I'll explain to the customer that we'll probably have to wait till March 15th.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, National Grid says that probably this work would start March 15th. Because if they open the roads now, they won't be able to patch them back up before.
I'm Anthony Boyd.
Well, hang on a second.
Oh, yeah.
I'll get to you in just a minute, sir.
I don't think we have to go into all the details. Go ahead, I'm sorry. So, just a question, Peter. Will this is just an extension of service? It would not involve an interruption of service for people on the
No,
street?
no, it would not. No.
I noticed when I was up there the other day, it looks like the hole, where the handhole is gonna go, is like 2/3 to 3/4 of the way across the street. Would that mean that we would have a closure in the road at all, or is this just a shallow dig that they could do small little parts of it, one at a time, one section at a time?
Yeah, this is a very short run here. I think they could do this in a day very easily. And it's only a handhole. It isn't a full manhole. We are going to put a manhole cover over it, but it'll be be about knee deep. So it's very shallow. And this is exactly where electricity's coming out right now. This is the
Okay.
joint in the middle of the road.
So, you'll notify the abutters and especially everybody on Hidden Ledge Road about this, because this is at the very beginning of Hidden Ledge Road.
That's correct.
And everybody on the rest of the road will have to go past that construction site when you're having it, even if it is for a day. So you'll make sure that they are all notified.
We will do that.
Any other questions before I open for the public? Okay. Adele, could we get your microphone back to Mr. Bullock?
you're gonna need a microphone.
No,
we do.
no, sir, you actually
do.
do, because there's TV cameras recording, and they need to be able to record your voice.
Anthony N. Bullock III, 1 Hidden Ledge Road. My question is there's going to be a manhole out here, right?
Yes.
So will there be will be updating all the houses on the Hidden Ledge Road with this device?
I got a photo. This is the house that we're working on, and this is your house here, right? Number 1. So it will open it for you also for the future, so that it'll be all set if you ever upgrade your service too. Because right now, your service comes there and hits that one, and then goes up the street that way.
Wait a second. It's my understanding, it's my understanding, looking at, it's my understanding that number 2 has a manhole here. Where is this going from? I mean, where is it, where the outlet or inlet? Where is that coming from?
This is number 2.
Yeah,
Your house is right here, number 1.
right, yeah, I
You
know.
down there, yeah.
But,
And that's your line actually intercepting the line in the street.
okay, this line is street, okay, going out, where is this going from?
This line goes up
That
Hidden
way,
Ledge. It
yeah.
goes up Hidden
Yeah,
Ledge.
but where's it come in from here? Does it come in from their property, across this way?
No, all the lines are in the road.
Okay, so
Okay.
this line goes out here? Is that what you're telling me?
Towards School Street.
I don't want to
School
get too
Street?
technical, but the primary line, the main line comes in, feeds the transformer, then the line comes back and dead ends right here, hits your house, and hits
Okay.
the house that we're going to do.
So there's nothing going through here?
We-
No pipe
We
going
do,
through
we
here?
do have a pipe coming out this way.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Not through their property?
No,
Because there used to be a manhole here,
In their property?
yeah. When we first built, there was a manhole.
Are you sure it's electricity?
No, it could not.
Sewer.
Okay, sewer. Okay, so this is gonna come out of here, okay.
That's correct.
Got it.
Yep.
All set?
All set.
Okay.
Thank you, Peter.
All right, so we'll anticipate the work starting in the spring, and then the normal caveat, return the road to as good or better condition. Any other questions from the board?
I'll make a motion, we close the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we grant the request from National Grid to install 22-foot of 3-inch secondary conduit in the public way and a new handhole in front of number 1 and 2 Hidden Ledge Road.
To start not before March.
To start not, excuse me, thank you, to start not before March 15th, with the road being left in as good, if not better, condition after the construction.
Got a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you very much, Peter.
All right. So. What?
Peter's retiring, this is his last time here.
Oh, come on.
So we can't give you a town chair, but
A black chair.
good luck, good luck. Okay.
Very much. Great way for him to finish.
It's,
Great way for him to finish.
All right, so we have consent agendas and other things, but I think we're going to move to the budget discussion. Unless you would prefer to wait for more FinCom members, which we can do. Yeah, we don't have a quorum, do we, for a FinCom?
He can stop it and get a quorum. I mean, when they get a quorum, he can.
With him, we're short one. We need
Okay.
Yeah, all right, so why don't we push for a little bit more with a few of our items? Yes? No?
Yeah, let's just
Yeah.
finish them.
All right, so consent agenda has Board of Selectmen minutes, proposal for an increase in the daily walk-on fee at Singing Beach from $5 to $7. And a donation from the Atwater Kent Foundation in the amount of $1,750. This is a restricted gift earmarked for the town's improvement fund, which we are identifying as, do we have an actual identification for that account yet?
We need to research what was done last year, so we'll
Okay.
be similar from last year.
So it's similar to last year's donation from the Atwater Kent Foundation. And that is the contents of the consent agenda.
Can I make just a couple, on page 2 of the first minutes, talked about the fall town meeting review under town meeting locations. The second line says 600 on the floor, 100 in the bleachers, and another 250 if the, and I think it should say if the cafeteria is opened up. That's what I remember us talking about, that if the cafeteria doors are opened up. And in the next set of minutes, where we were working on Mr. Somers becoming the interim manager at the Essex County Club on page 3, it said Mr. Somers is not tip certified. That should be all capitals, and it should be TIPS, T-I-P-S, which is a certification for alcohol servers.
Fair enough. Got those? All right. Um, Get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so we'll be writing a letter to the Atwood Kent Foundation, thanking them for this donation. And in the correspondence section, we have a resident letter dated 12/5 regarding marijuana sales, a resident complaint regarding 3 Colburn Road, and a resident letter regarding a town tree hanging over a resident's home. And the towns looked at that tree and rendered an opinion, and we will continue to look at it on an as-needed basis. So I think at this point, rather than going into the town administrator's report, we will go into the budget discussion. So, Greg,
Okay,
Are these our books?
these are our books.
One. Best times.
so we're at the stage of the budget where you have before you a preliminary budget for the next fiscal year, which begins obviously next July. This will be voted on by the attendees of town meeting come April. And it represents, the books in front of you represent quite a bit of work already. Obviously, there's work to be done still. But department heads and have been working hard on this budget for the last couple of months. And want to thank particularly Andrea and Debbie for helping to get all of this together and all the number crunching that this represents, that Andrea in particular was very instrumental in doing. So it's a good effort to date, and I look forward to working with everyone as we proceed, fine-tuning and presenting a budget to the voters come 1st of April. So I wanted to go through some high-level summaries of the budget. Obviously, we will get into more detail as needed. The FinCom liaisons with the different departments have met in reviewing the preliminary budgets. I think those were good discussions, focusing again on sort of key issues. And I appreciate people's, I think, fairly universally felt desires to focus on the key issues and not worry too much about, $100 here or $500 there. Not that money isn't important, but we have limited time and we should focus on the main issues and the main drivers of the budget. So I always like to just start with an overall big picture of where the total dollars are going. So again, this budget represents a total expenditure of just under 34 million. Last year we were at 33.2. This is now 33.9. This assumes the regional school district will receive 15.7 of that, and that town operations will take up 11.2. Capital expenditures coming in right around 2 million. And our annual debt and capital exclusion, if you recall, we did a capital exclusion in the current year, and we anticipate continuing with that. Again, trying to target that 1.9 million in total between debt payments and capital exclusion. Recall, capital exclusion is basically paying cash instead of borrowing for capital or capital projects. But it's that cash is raised outside the limits of 2.5, just like a debt exclusion is raised outside the cap of 2.5. We have our two main enterprise funds, the water and sewer operations, 1.6 million being raised and spent there. This number, the 0.6, is merely a placeholder to keep it the same as last year, so it doesn't throw off unnecessarily percentage changes from year to year. My expectation is that number will be significantly lower this coming year in terms of proposed projects from the Community Preservation Committee. I think they are anticipating a much lower year in terms of projects and perhaps accumulating the dollars that that are coming into the community preservation tax to save it for future projects. And then we have our various state assessments, our OPEB trust contribution, our snow and ice money that we put aside, assuming we budget for a deficit. If we don't use it, that's all for the good. And then we show additional funds going into stabilization for another year. So those are all the expenditures in broad brush strokes. And of course, we have quite a large amount of assets on the street, whether they be streets themselves or pipes or buildings. I won't go through all of this, but I think it's helpful to just remember all the different services that we do provide as a municipality, whether it be the drinking water that is potable, and of course cleaning that water before it reverts back to, in our case, going out to the harbor. Obviously, lots of snow and ice work, over 3,200 lane miles of plowing typically done in a typical winter. About 1,000 tons of trash collected, about 700 tons of recyclables, and 120 tons of compost, and growing. That compost pickup is gaining in popularity and slowly growing in numbers. Obviously, we send out lots of bills, primarily property tax bills and utility bills, as well as excise or the car tax bills. Lots of beach stickers, lots of dog stickers, parking tickets, Council on Aging, giving over 4,200 rides in the vans, over 3,500 meals delivered through the Meals on Wheels program, et cetera. It gives you a sense of a wide range of services. We're a full-service community, even though we are small. We provide a full range of municipal services. So every budget has assumptions and some key goals. These are pretty similar to what we have seen in years past. We assume that the citizens want a very similar level of service that we are currently providing, that they are willing to accept a 2.5% increase in their property taxes, though we don't budget to that, but we certainly don't want to go higher than that in terms of requiring an override. We assume that we will keep the amount of funds going to debt and capital exclusions to be the same. And in fact, one of the research items that we've identified already for this year is to see if we can provide for the capital needs on the town side on a cash basis, at least for the majority of those capital needs. So we have an opportunity to, instead of issuing new debt, reduce that debt, retire all of that debt, and replace all of that debt payments for capital exclusion, again at that 1.9 level over time, and rely on those cash payments for doing our capital improvements and avoiding the need for new bonds for town projects. Would save us significantly in terms of interest payments and allow us to, instead of paying interest, plow that same money into projects and enable us to stretch our dollars further in terms of what it can accomplish. So that's an exciting possibility, and I look forward to fine-tuning that plan over the course of the next couple months. Obviously, that is very helpful as we try to continue to address the backlog of infrastructure needs, whether they be pipes in the ground or the roads primarily. Other goals include continuing to do a better job reaching out to the residents and educating them and getting citizen input on the major decisions impacting the town. Another major goal is advancing the master plan recommendations. That plan should be finalized this coming spring, and we want to make sure we're well positioned then to act on it and not just have it be a piece of paper on the shelf. So there's a real desire to be specific in the recommendations and to begin implementing those recommendations next year. It also anticipates some staff increases. I'll get to this in a minute, but it does talk about bolstering the amount of labor in the harbor department in terms of more presence on the harbor with the increased boater traffic. Does assume that we will be going forward with a new career firefighter as a floater to to help us in this crunch time of staffing while we work on a more permanent long-range solution, and also looking at some improvements to DPW and how we manage projects going forward. So we want to continue to maintain our strong fiscal condition. We enjoy a AAA rating, which is highly unusual, actually, for a town of this size. And we have very healthy reserves that we want to continue to make sure we have. So these fiscal challenges, again, nothing new here. Making sure we are right-sizing, we have the right amount of staff for our public safety operations, primarily fire, police, and the harbor. And we have some proposals for you for this new budget to consider. Again, a lot of emphasis on capital needs and putting together or maintaining, advancing our 5+5 year plan. That is 5 years of specific capital plans and projects, and a look in years 6 through 10 on what are some of the bigger items on the horizon, and how we can address that, as I said, perhaps through a more creative approach using cash rather than using indebtedness. Benefit costs continue to always challenge us. We have done fairly well on our health insurance side, on the town side, in the last couple of years. With contract negotiations, we have moved to a less costly plan. Overall, it has higher deductibles, so it is beneficial for people to stay as healthy as possible, obviously, and to avoid some of those health costs if they can. We've been pretty aggressive in our wellness planning and offering workshops and seminars in town, and on giving people time during their day to do that. We have a very active Weight Watchers plan here in town that has been very popular and very successful, actually. But we continue to face challenges. We assume in this budget that we have about a 7% or 8% increase in health insurance, but we are able to absorb that without increasing the total amount for health insurance due to people opting out, because we are offering an incentive to people not to take our insurance, and we are moving towards higher premium splits with staff. So new hires will be now paying 35% of their health insurance rather than 30%. So all of that helps in enabling us to level fund our town side. I'm spending a little bit of time on this because it's not the case on the school side. They are, after going through 3 or 4, maybe 5 years of very low increases on health insurance. In fact, they were below our payments in terms of the plan cost. The tide has significantly changed for them, and they are facing, they're coming off a 28% increase, and they are facing a 16% increase for next year, which will absorb almost every dollar that we might be able to give them in terms of new money. Again, I'll get into a little bit more detail as we go forward. We do continue to fund our OPEB obligations and the pensions, and they are on target to be fully funded within 16 years from now. Mentioned the school. What you will see in this budget is an assumed increase of 3.6%, which was normally would be a level services budget, but because of the health insurance challenges that they face, that 3.6, even though it's a high number, will require cuts in current services. And they were working on that now, taking advantage of retiring teachers and perhaps not replacing them. So more from the school committee during the month of January on that whole topic. So a look at the new revenues. So this is taking a look at what new dollars we would have going forward. And again, assuming the 2.5% increase on existing properties, bringing in just under $600,000 of new money. We assume new growth tracking as it has recently. This is a bit on the conservative side. We brought in about $275,000 this current year, in new growth, that's taxation on new construction. We assume slightly less than that at 250. We assume a small bump up in local receipts, and also a very small amount in state aid. We don't receive that much, so a 2.5% doesn't result in much. And we do show an increase of, on the enterprise funds, water and sewer fees going up. Bringing in about $940,000 in total. That's 2.8% increase on the total of 33.2, which is our current total spend. So how might we divvy up that $940,000? So on the town side, we show a 2.5% increase on salaries, which is what is now in the contracts. That 2.5% is a little high, given inflation, but it is, the trade-off was that we were able to get staff to pay more for health insurance. So that was why we gave a little bit more on the salaries, because we actually do better on the health insurance piece. Even though that is showing a 7% increase, I'm showing a 0. I'm level funding the amount, as I explained a little earlier, because of people opting out and because of new hires paying a higher percent and because of going to a lower cost plan overall. So that was significant, because that normally is, 100 and some odd thousand increase. On the pension side, we are showing.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
What percentage of the employees are in the plan?
What percent are in the plan? I'm going to say 90% of full-time, maybe 85, I'm guessing. I can get you an exact number, but it's probably in that range.
Thank you.
On the pension side, we normally anticipate about a 7.5. This is higher this year because they take a snapshot every year. And last year, when they took the snapshot in September, we did not have a DPW director in the plan. We did not have two chiefs, a fire chief or a police chief, in the plan at the time. So when you include those on top of this 7.5, it translated to a 10% increase on the pension side. And then smaller increases, as you can see, taking up about 440 of that $940,000 of new money. So that 440 is roughly a 2.4% overall increase in expenditures. So what are those going for? Most services and staffing remain the same. However, we do see some higher demands and some changed circumstances that we feel warrant some increases in staffing. There is proposed in the budget a new seasonal deputy harbor master. That'd be a full-time person from roughly through June through mid-October, end of September. Primarily driven by a pretty significant increase in boater traffic that we see both in the harbor itself and certainly out at Sand Dollar Cove, traffic in Magnolia, et cetera. So when we look at our other similar communities, we have been getting by with fewer staff, and I think it's time that we need to recognize we need to bolster our presence on the water. This would be funded through the water fund fees, so it's not a taxation issue, but obviously it still is an expenditure. The second increase that is proposed in the budget is to add a 13th career firefighter as a floater. We can go into more detail on this, but the short version is with 12 people on, they all have leave time, and about 40% of the time, that means we only have 2 on. And in the past, we have been able to rely on call firefighters to fill in and make up that difference. We are down to less than a handful of active call people, and it has been increasingly difficult to get people to come back. We are working hard to reinvigorate the call department. It's a challenge, not only here, but but really in all communities. Some have a culture of volunteerism more so than other communities, but it's a challenge everywhere. So a floater is able to fill, I forget the percentage, maybe 60 or 70% of that, 40%. And then the other would be relying on overtime of existing career to fill in as well. So what that 13th firefighter does is allow us, along with still using some overtime, but not as much as we have been using, to ensure that we have 3 people on 24/7, 365, year-round, and rely on callbacks for the 4th if it is needed. So that is a proposal going forward. I think the feeling this is a short-term solution to a longer-term problem, and that longer-term solution most likely means looking at a regional solution for our public safety, in particular fire. And there are some opportunities that we've had some initial discussions with some of our neighboring communities, and there certainly is interest in talking about some different models. It won't happen overnight, but I think if we get working on it, we can be successful in crafting a more regional solution to our public safety needs. A small increase in staffing in the DPW is also proposed. This is a part-time, 16-hour-a-week accounting clerk position. What this does is frees up the assistant to the director to be much more engaged in project management and public notification and outreach. So it frees her up from the accounts payable and payroll duties and allow her to concentrate more specifically on that project management. And we struggled a bit this past summer with some of that project management and looking at ways to improve that, because we certainly will be continuing with a fair amount of construction and an aggressive capital program, certainly for the foreseeable future going forward. And lastly, a small boost, 5 hours a week, is proposed for the town planner to help with the implementation of the new master plan, as well as bolster the support that she can give to the planning board in their quasi-judicial role, as well as the zoning board of adjustment as they review applications as well. They could benefit from staff review of applications, making sure they are complete and that they are vetted prior to coming to the boards for review for a hopefully a more efficient process all around. So obviously this adds money to the budget, but the bulk of these changes are paid for by savings elsewhere in the budget. Primarily, we are anticipating a large saving in our electric bill by going to the street lights, for the LEDs for the street lights at about a $60,000 savings. And there are miscellaneous savings throughout the budget, totaling another 40 or so thousand to give us the savings to pay for these changes. There's the possibility of a further reduction in costs, and that is not funding the vacant patrolman position. We've talked about this for the last couple of years now, and while we don't have the injured officer's case resolved yet, we are hopeful that that will be resolved before the start of the new fiscal year. So we could eliminate that one position that has been vacant for the last couple of years without detriment to the police operations. Some other highlighted changes. You do see additional costs in a few other areas, non-staffing. If you recall, we went to the Finance Committee early in this year for a reserve fund transfer for the monthly newsletter that has been put out now by the Selectmen for the last 6 months. This budget assumes that will continue, and so we've added that cost to the Selectmen's budget. This is also an actuarial year for the OPEB analysis, and so we have to add money for the audit to pay for that. We have taken electronic voting, which was a standalone article, and we have moved that into the town clerk's budget. So that's an increase there. It's really shifting from a standalone to adding it to the budget. But also being a state election year, we have elections, both a primary and a regular election next fall. So the elections accounts are increased for that. We also show in the accounting department the full amount of the assistant accountant being shown in the accounting department, whereas it has in the past been divided up between the accounting department and DPW. So again, by doing this, I already explained why we wanted to do it in the accounting, or in the DPW, but by doing it here as well, it'll free up Andrea's time to help me out on some financial planning, long-range planning, and help us move more to a finance director model where she can help better oversee treasurer collector's office and the assessor's office as well. So it's part of an effort to free up my plate somewhat so that I can focus more on some of the longer range planning and some of the accountability issues and concerns that we've had with department heads, making sure that we are, that my time is spent more on those issues rather than sort of the nitty-gritty weeds of operations. In DPW, again, this shows a shift from, for the director, from out of professional services as a contracted services to now being back in-house where it was originally as a salary item. And again, in DPW, the operations manager salary was shown to be divided up between water, sewer, and highway. It's more cumbersome and takes more time to do that in terms of payroll and tracking of time. So this proposes showing this whole salary in DPW, and then at the end of the year, you do an indirect transfer from water and sewer. So again, it's really more of an accounting mechanism than anything else. And finally, you'll recall that we also needed to do a reserve fund for veterans benefits. We have not had to pay out benefits for quite a number of years. We now have 3 veterans receiving benefits, and so we show that increased in the veterans account. We do get reimbursed. It's a year lag. We get about 75% of that money back, but there is a delay. So those are some of the highlights that you'll see in the budget as you review things. Just quickly, we showed this a little differently when we had the all boards meeting with the school. Just to highlight here, you can see this is different in terms of I'm showing that 16% increase on the insurance piece, which is a big chunk of change for the school district. Does not leave very much for salary increases, nor does it leave anything really for maintenance and other expenses. And it does show some continuing to fund their OPEB. It's obligated through the contract they have with the teachers. And so in order for this to work, they will need to find some $550,000 more in savings to accommodate what is typical salary increases. And so what they have indicated at their preliminary meeting held last week was that they will be looking to not fill various retiring positions, as well as other strategies that they will be working on over the course of the next month. So nonetheless, this assumes a 3.2% overall increase to the district's to the district's budget. And breaking that down, because of that differential in enrollment, I'm assuming that trend continues. It's averaged out. I think it's a 3-year average, rolling average. So a 3.2 really translates to a 3.6 or 3.7 increase for Manchester. So that's where that 497 is in red. And then if our vocational school allocation is increased by $3,000 or 4% increase, that gets us to that $500,000. So again, just to summarize, 940,000 in new money, 440 to the town side of the ledger, about 47% of that available new funds, and basically $5,000 on the school side, 497 plus 3, which is about 53% of those are new available funds, and increasing the school district's allocation by 3.6%.
Can we just go back one, Greg, for
Yep.
one?
Yep.
On the school salaries, 3% of 16.1 is $480,000.
Correct.
But you say, indicate a net change of 29. Does that mean a savings from people that are not gonna be filled is on the order of 450,000?
That's what that indicates. And so whether that will happen or not, and whether they'll try to get savings elsewhere, I don't know. But that's where that 550K in savings somewhere needs to come in order for them to absorb that kind of increase in health insurance and still stay at an overall increase of 3.2%. So they have.
Because obviously, if they had a typical increase in health insurance, they'd be significantly below, or they'd probably be closer to 2.5 or even below that, right?
Well, I think what you would see is that they would replace many of those retirees.
Oh, all right, yeah, but under this scenario.
Under this
Net
scenario,
basis,
right,
yeah. Okay, thank you.
right. So I don't have all of those answers in terms of how they're going to be addressing that. That's what they are working hard on now and will be presenting at their hearing at the end of January.
But the 3.2 represents finding that 550.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, it assumes,
Just wanna confirm.
yes, yes. And that is what they are operating under.
Yep.
So they understand that if they go higher than a 3.6 for Manchester, that kicks us into an override situation, and they have stated pretty clearly that they do not want to do that they are going to avoid that. They have their sights on, obviously, the school project, and are working hard to live within the confines of 2.5 for their operating. And again, I just put this out there as, what does this all mean in terms of taxpayers and homeowners? So both the mean and median valued homes are up there, their current tax bills, and what a 2.5% increase represents for those, if you're an owner of that mean, or if you're owner of a median house, or more or less. It gives you some benchmarks to peg yourself against or compare yourself with.
What is, I'm looking at that picture, and then I'm going all the way back to your new growth. Your $250,000 in new dollars coming in, what is that new growth?
So those are renovations and new construction of some sort, whether it be a brand-new home or a renovated home.
So with the federal tax bill pending,
Right.
do we seriously think that people are gonna be aggressively investing in their homes to generate this new growth?
So that's a good question. My crystal ball isn't very clear on that right now.
I can't hold you
No, I know.
responsible for that.
I know.
But
It's-
we are planning for the financial
We are
future of the
planning on.
town, so it's kind of relevant.
Right, it is relevant, absolutely. So this is conservative, but it's not ultra-conservative. So it's lower than what we have seen. We have seen as high as 350,000, 375,000 in new growth. And 250 obviously is much lower than that. This past year, we saw 275, so 250 isn't that much lower than what we saw last year. So,
I think I am, and I've, shared it with the board, and, I have a personal deep concern about
Yeah.
the growth prospects for this town
sure,
because of the economic environment.
Yeah.
That's just something that I'm very concerned about our baking in assumptions about new tax revenue. I mean, obviously, I want the town to prosper. That's one of the reasons why I moved back here.
sure.
Because of the prevailing winds, it just seems hard to see how that's going to necessarily happen. And then if the mean residential value is $1 million, and the new federal tax bill is saying that people can deduct interest only up to 700,000, I think is what it is. You know, that's a real,
10,000,
that's a huge impact to this town, not just for existing property owners, because I know a lot of people are grandfathered if you already live here, but for new town growth and the assumptions of growth of property values, which is not just this new growth, this is like the overall property values in the entire town, which has ramifications on tax revenues for the town. So I just,
Isn't there a significant lag on those numbers? In other words, we should know a year in advance what the growth is going to be. Because if you apply for a building permit now, it's not gonna start hitting you for a whole nother tax year.
Right.
So it seems to me that that's a number that we could have really good numbers on if we looked at our building permit numbers.
yeah, I agree with that.
And
However,
I'm doing construction now, it will be finished in 2018. It's not, I'm not gonna start paying for it in 2020.
I'm agreeing with it, but if categorically the overall growth of the town goes down, it's a problem, not just for new construction, it's the existing property values, period, for all houses. And the area that I'm most concerned about is where we're beginning to talk about the capital investments, and we can, I want you to finish, but I do want to come back to this, because the number one area that I'm concerned about is the planning that we're doing on debt payments. And what is our plan there? Because with the new school, with a lot of the other things that the strategic plan is coming up with, there's a lot of built-in assumptions about the servicing of debt that I want all these things to happen for the town, but I'm very concerned about what we're heading into. It has nothing to do with the town, it has to do with the macroeconomics and our ability to continue to service debt the way we have. I hope that's being baked in. I don't know, but that's something I'd like to see. And it may be unusual, an ask for the FY19 planning process, but it's something that I think it's a not an insignificant number in our overall town expenditures. At least 5%, and with the amount of building we want to do, it's going to grow. And the appetite for raising taxes, I think, is going to get very difficult.
President, I have a question on slide number 6. This goes back to what Sarah was saying, new growth, 250,000. That's on new growth that was probably generated 2 years ago or so, right? Is that right? So the
Correct.
250,000 is what we hope to realize this coming fiscal year, but it's on it's on betterments that have happened.
Sure, yeah.
At least 18 months.
I'm not challenging the
prior.
250. I'm
I think you're flagging an issue going forward that we
flagging
need
an
to-
issue going forward,
Right.
and are we planning for the future even in FY19? Because I'm sure that is on past events that we're recouping the benefit of, but will that continue to happen? And are we therefore even beginning to save for future debt now? Are we building cash? Because beyond taxation, there's also expected raise in interest rates, there's expected rises in inflation. The operating assumptions that I think we have, I think are all gonna change. And I'm not trying to be doomsdayer here, I'm just trying to be conservative for the sake of the town.
Right, so the discussion, it's all very good to bring it up, and it's appropriate to have a very focused conversation on that and see what we think the impacts may be. It also dovetail, I think, pretty nicely with an effort to look at a cash basis approach to capital versus continue going new debt.
Except if you look at the fact that your interest rate here is probably gonna be at an all-time low for the next 20 years today. Which would tell you, go out and leverage as much as you can. You can always pay it off if you want, but you can lock in a favorable rate of interest. I mean, they all balance against one another. It's a big model.
One other thing to flag as you're trying to guesstimate revenues, and I think this is gonna be a really odd thing. A lot of tax planners are suggesting people prepay state and local taxes. Now
Yeah,
that-
we're actually seeing that here.
It just got killed Friday.
It just got killed.
It got killed, but a lot of people are saying, yeah, but come find me. So we may have a surge in revenue.
Was it got
that's
killed?
gonna-
I didn't do that.
Got taken
Yeah,
out.
it's Friday afternoon. So, but I'm just saying, like, you may have a surge in revenues that you're gonna lose from a subsequent year. Just that.
Good news is the town's fiscal year doesn't coincide with the calendar year.
Right, right.
Buffers it some.
Got it.
Interesting.
So can I ask questions, Arthur and Scott? Does that mean that they came out with a decree that you can't pay ahead?
Yeah. At least, I don't know what it's finally voted on, but that looks like part of the final package on Friday.
What is it you can't pay?
State and local taxes.
You're capped on an annual basis, and you can't preload by paying next year, this year,
2017.
to basically.
Arbitrage has been outlawed. Unless you're a real estate developer.
Yeah.
So, identifying a number of key topics that need further research, and some of these Finance Committee has already identified and people are working on. Clearly, how we approach the elementary school projects, plural, both Essex and Manchester, will be critical to our fiscal stability or challenges, whichever way you want to look at that. So that presents a very large challenge. And there are ways to help soften the blow. We can try to find savings within operations and shift those dollars to paying for the debt on the new schools, so that not all of it is new taxation through excluded debt. The timing in terms of how the fall off of existing debt occurs is critical. That's particularly true for the Essex project. If that Essex project can wait until, say, 2030, by the time it gets built and the new bond is issued, the high school bond would be completely retired. So that would be a huge benefit from a timing perspective there.
On that state funding that was at 25% that the state contributes to the project?
Yes.
Is that
25, 30.
31, right?
31 right now.
31.
Is that an annually generated budget program of the state, or is that a?
Well, they lock in at the once the final number is locked in for the duration of the project.
No, I'm talking, stepping back to the state level. Is that program funded on a yearly basis for the entire state, or is that a program that's actually funded by some other mechanism?
It has a dedicated revenue source.
It does.
Yes. I'm forgetting what that is at the moment. Was it a penny on the sales tax, or it was something? I'm forgetting what it is.
However,
It
the
does-
distribution percentage does change depending on what they think is the appropriate amount of school building that they want to support.
Right, the percent contribution from the state varies from community to community.
That's just something I mean, maybe the building committee is doing that, or somebody in the town, or I don't know who we look to, but is that something that we should be more alert to? If the quote-unquote crap hits the fan because of statewide impacts next year, which there's a lot of towns in Massachusetts that are gonna be feeling pain because of where we're going. Is that program actually rock solid? And as we're planning at the town level on this money showing up, again, I'm not saying there are, I'm just saying it's something to check all your assumptions.
You mean the 31%?
The 25% from the state.
The 31% for
I
the
thought it was down to
Memorial School
25.
project?
31.
No, it's 31. That's locked in. That's not going anywhere. That's committed to.
But I think he's saying what happens if there's a cataclysmic event and the state backs off on its financing. I think you can say that if the state would do it at 31%, you have no new school.
Right.
And you have a school that's collapsing.
I'm not saying that's gonna happen, I'm just saying.
But I think that would be, unless somebody
I think
else
we should just be
disagrees.
on alert for what's happening at the state level with decisions about funding, because all programs are subject, depending on where the state goes with what's happening, and with the number of towns, with the real estate values at the size that they are, the expectation is that the state funding is going to change. So I just think it's something we should be alert about, and on, ears out.
So you're talking about MSBA funding?
Yes. we're assuming that, I've always assumed that program's just there and we're gonna benefit, and the challenge is on us to find the money. I'm just saying, we should, with what's happening macroscopically, we should be checking, just be alert as to.
Let's just get to some numbers that are salient, okay? The school that was built a few years ago, we got a 40% contribution from the state, minus some deductions for things that the state declined to pay for, okay? That legislation was recrafted. 40% was the minimum at the time. You couldn't get any less as a town. Now we're looking at 31%. There are things that the state will not pay for. And the compensation rate, the building rate that the MSBA is using is vastly lower than what our consultants are telling us it's gonna be the cost of the school. So 31% may be locked in, but it means nothing. Because at the end of the day, it will not be 31% of the total project cost at all. So it's very fluid, and
But it's 31% of the cost to qualify.
that's correct, right, absolutely right. But the cost to qualify and watching the number morphing north, it's gonna be a bigger number.
So lots, in these topics, there's lots to, lots to consider and lots to research. Just finishing up, again, some research topics in terms of regional service opportunities. We mentioned public safety. We also have been awarded a grant. We will need to flush out the details of a potential regional composting facility at the transfer station. It could pay real dividends to us if we're allowed to process the biosolids from the treatment plant. We're currently paying some $80,000 a year to ship the residuals from the sewer plant to some facility. I forget where, but it's a long haul. But if we were able to process that locally, that would save us significant dollars. But again, more details on this as other opportunities, as well as other opportunities as they come along. We're also looking at a number of different ways to reduce our energy costs. In addition to converting to LEDs, we have some opportunities for potential solar installations on town facilities, or an opportunity to participate in a municipal net metering program where the solar panels are located in another community, but we benefit from the net metering credits. So those are things that are underway, being pursued, and could significantly further reduce our electricity costs. Each of our treatment plants cost right around $100,000 in electric cost alone. So if we're able to cut those 40–50%, that's significant money for us.
Are a lot of those savings relatively short-term because as more people jump on the bandwagon, your credits continue to decline? So are you creating a problem for the town if all of a sudden we're able to reduce the budget by a lot now and then we start losing the credits and those
So
expenses start going back up?
So the two programs that we're looking at don't rely on the SRECs directly to us, the solar renewable energy credits coming back to us. So that number is in flux. The one plan that we have that's not our facility would give us a guaranteed percentage reduction of the tariff, the utility tariff. So we would be, I think it was 12% below whatever National Grid is charging us now or in the future. So it's always 12% less. The other program is where you purchase, you'd actually have a solar installation on a town facility. Typically, you do that through a power purchase agreement, and you lock in your rate for 20 years. So those are just, again, more information to come, but options that may help us reduce our expenditures. And then just, because I don't want to forget it, because it will impact us being a coastal community, is just the impact of storm surges and sea level rise. The most immediate challenge we have is thinking about the sewer plant here, and it is soon needing a fair amount of reinvestment, replacing equipment and motors and et cetera. And if we're gonna do it here, do we have a plan to fortify that plant so that we know that it's worth investing for another 50 years in that plant?
What's your time expectation on that?
In time expectation for,
Having to do something, spend $1 to fix something.
so we need to start spending dollars in the next 5 years. And so before we spend those dollars, I want to make sure that we have a plan to protect that investment going down the road.
So between the school and the sewage treatment plant and many other things that we aspire to do, is it your plan, or how do we give guidance to departments as to what the town can do?
So what you'll see in your books is a 5-year capital plan that gives our current thinking of where investment should go, and how much. So we will spend time reviewing that in detail over the next month and a half. We'll dedicate an evening at minimum to going over in a lot of detail the capital plan and whether or not you feel it's heading in the right direction or not, and what fine tuning. And again, having a subgroup of us working between meetings and fleshing out more details and projecting some scenarios. I think that's what we should be doing as we prepare for those meetings.
Sure, yeah.
So I always end with budgets are about choices. You've heard it from me before, you'll hear it from me again. So what choices do we want to make about the services we provide? Are there services that citizens feel could be scaled back or not? Are there new service delivery models? Again, looking at regional services perhaps, looking at the role of technology to help us out, to become more efficient, et cetera. How can we continue to look at what we do and do it a little better? And are there ways to save money in that same process? And looking at different revenue sources, whether they be higher user fees. The board just approved higher walk-on fees for the beach. That $2 increase should bring in an extra $50,000 or so. So there's opportunities like that. Mooring fees, they are high, but there's probably an ability to increase them further. What about some additional growth in town? There's a lot of emphasis in the master plan, a lot of emphasis has been placed on the LCD, the limited commercial district, and seeing if some zoning changes could allow some additional uses up there, all the while still protecting the water resources and the natural resources through strict performance standards and low-impact development standards. So those are opportunities that again, will be further discussed and has been a focus really of the master plan as it progresses.
Greg, do you ever hear from anybody that which is way off the page, maybe that they want services enhanced? They want, say, if we're gonna pay more, we're willing to pay more taxes if we know it's gonna happen, but these are the things we'd like to have happen. More trees, more this, more that. Is there anybody that's in that frame of mind? Do you hear that at all, or is it pretty much we wanna cut back? Or maintain where we are which is impossible to do for so long, so.
I would say most people say maintain.
Mhm.
It would appear people like the services they're getting.
Mhm.
When we have had people, whether in this room or at forums, and the topic has gone to fire and rescue, I would say that at least the people who are voicing an opinion are saying they want to make sure that ambulance rolls and gets there in 3 or 4 minutes.
And that was an upgrade, the ALS, right? I mean,
That was an
we made
upgrade
that
10
choice.
years ago, yes.
Yeah, but we
10,
made
12
that
years
choice
ago.
then, and that goes on forever. As long as people know it's costs money, that's great.
Yeah, I mean, frankly, when the town went to ALS, that was the beginning of the decline. You sort of set the stage for losing your call, because that ALS bar is high. That's a really high bar for a volunteer to meet.
Right.
So that foreshadowed
But-
where we are
but was
today.
that raised at the time? I don't recall.
Yeah, I probably was not.
No.
Probably was not. So I don't have a strong sense beyond, what other services. People want strong DPW services. They certainly want those roads plowed and those sidewalks plowed. People don't want to shovel their own sidewalks. We get a lot of calls. People expect a lot from the DPW. It's probably one of the highest demand areas in terms of daily
So
calls.
it's something you see all the time.
Yes,
you know,
people
it's again
experience
a
it.
value thing that people perceive, we're paying all this money, are we getting what we thought?
Right.
So
Right.
it's just perception and reality sometimes collide.
Right. Yes. So the books are assembled very similar to what you've seen in the past. You start off with summary. I have a narrative that goes in a little more detail than what I've just presented here. You then get into the summary pages, and then you get into each departmental budgets. So each departmental budget has listed goals, mission statement and goals for each department. You have a review, a summary of staffing, and what it's been over the last few years. Sort of an org chart for each department in terms of who's in what position. In the back of the book, we need to add a couple more things, but you will find the capital budget. There's some more detail that we will be adding. So reason for the 3-ring binder, we can hand you out some punched paper and you can add it to that. It'll provide a little more detail. You'll find the benefit cost by department in the appendix. You don't find, but there's a slot for in Appendix A, the long-range 5-year forecast, multi-year forecast. We're just fine-tuning that a little bit, and we will again have you hand that out, and you can put it in the appropriate section there. So I leave you with lots of reading material, and there's no lack of topics for us to tackle. I think it behooves us to stay focused on some of these big issues. Certainly funding capital is a major issue. How some of these federal tax changes might impact us, absolutely something we should be talking about, and changing some of our assumptions going forward. That is most appropriate. And I welcome your time, and I appreciate the time that you as volunteers give to this, and look forward to the ongoing discussion as we proceed over the next couple months.
Okay, any questions from the board tonight? Any more questions from FinCom on this so far?
I think we've asked them. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So, well, thank you for the time spent producing this booklet once again. And, yep, we have plenty to do, and it will be an interesting few months.
Okay. I said, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, tomorrow we focus on some sort of broad projections of capital.
That's at their FinCom meeting.
Was that?
That's their meeting.
That's the joint,
The joint meeting, right?
joint meeting with the school and both towns. No, town and school.
Town and school, so we're doing that, like we do with the operational budget a few weeks ago.
I'll give a very quick overview of our 5-year plan.
We'll take it.
Okay, shall we move on to the town administrator's report?
So some updates for you. We have we don't have all the signs up, but they are working on it. The new speed limit signs are going up. They've started with the new 25-mile-an-hour signs on the outer skirt, on the outside limits of town. And next week, the 20-mile-per-hour signs will be going up on the village streets. So, signs are one thing, but what really gets people's attention is when they see the blue lights behind them. So I think if we're serious about wanting to slow people down, we're going to need to start issuing some more tickets. Give people a warning the first time, but if you're a repeat offender, I think people should start expecting that they're going to get a ticket. So.
I'm in favor of that.
So a couple of citizen panels. One is to help, on a short-term basis, to help with the review of resumes and help with interviews on the DPW director. We'll be getting those underway in January. So have 3 or 4 folks who have stepped forward. It wouldn't hurt to have a couple more. So if you know of someone out there who might be interested, it doesn't hurt to tap their shoulder and say, why don't you step forward?
Are they from town or from surrounding towns? Any of the candidates?
We have one candidate who lives in town, and a couple from neighboring towns.
Neighboring as in adjacent, or neighboring as in?
Almost adjacent, maybe 2 over. So we, today was the deadline for applications, and we'll be reviewing those and getting the process started. Also have, as we talked about, as one of my goals for the year was to form an informal advisory group. And this is they don't have formal authority, but it's more of a think tank group, bounce ideas off of them, and sort of hear their opinions on how things are operating to give me feedback. So again, have 3 folks who have stepped forward. Wouldn't hurt to have a couple more there as well. So if there are people interested in serving on that, I would certainly welcome their letters of interest. Third item, construction updates. We are really wrapping up the season. The Belcourt project should have finished today. I didn't hear the latest update by the end of the day, but I believe that if it's not wrapped up today, it certainly will be tomorrow. The one exception is the Chowder House will be under construction during the winter. They started that today. Surprisingly, they were quite shocked to find that floor being held by 2x4s. The supporting beams were merely a 2x4.
Awesome.
It's amazing someone didn't go crashing through that floor. So I'm glad we're doing that project. So that'll provide a significant shoring up of that structure, beloved as it is. So that'll be the only winter project that we are planning at this point. That doesn't mean to say there won't be a burst pipe that we have to respond to. I hope not, but nonetheless, that tends to happen. There will be some work by Comcast. They are continuing to do some work, relaying some cabling. In particular, they are hoping to do some cabling out front here. We have asked them to wait till after the holidays here and do that in January along the sidewalk on the other side of the street here.
Is that something, if it's work along the sidewalk, that can wait until the rest of the work on those sidewalks might be finished?
So it's not in the sidewalk, it's right in the street on the curb.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which is that?
Excuse me? What?
Oh, never mind.
Yeah.
But speaking of sidewalks, there is the desire by landowner across the street who is improving a number of properties and has requested that he be allowed to install pavers or brick sidewalks along there. The HDC, Historic District Commission, has approved the concept. And Carol's working on more specific specifications, assuming that you are okay with giving an approval for that if it meets standards.
Well, an ADA in particular.
Yes, yeah.
I do have some concerns about it. The ADA is one thing. I'm concerned about the long-range planning that we have related to MS4, and I'm also concerned that, well, obviously the maintenance, which there's discussion about having them sign a maintenance agreement. But I'm a little bit concerned about creating not precisely either a precedence or a patchwork, without having a larger scale plan for the town. This is, I mean, if you look at it from the standpoint of like the master planning view, this is not fitting into that motif. This is something, if we were gonna go to a change in the look of town at the sidewalk level, it's something that I feel like ought to come from the community and not be driven by an individual business owner.
Or property owner. So, I don't know, has the Downtown Improvement Committee been involved in any of this?
I believe they have reviewed it, but I need to double check where they stand with that.
We're counting on them as part of the master plan umbrella.
Yeah.
That the Downtown Improvement and Historic District would have that first look and say at that, obviously, so.
Yeah,
Because if this became a direction then that we were going, that would, the implication is that there'd be a significant long-term cost to the town to upgrade our sidewalks to pavers. So I have concerns here.
Yeah, I too have concerns. I looked at this a little bit, and the chairman always used a word that I use, like it gives a patchwork look to the downtown. It also certainly opens a door for anyone else in the downtown who owns a lot of property, and there are a couple of families that own a lot of property. And the next thing you know, they may want to put in green pavers, while this gentleman might want to put in red pavers. I know I've seen plenty of sidewalks, plenty of crosswalks that have had bricks or pavers in them that have all risen up and had all kinds of holes in them. Salem had a disaster with that when they've tried to put it in a couple of times. The last time this came to us, it was kind of like, are you willing to let the DPW go ahead and investigate and see how this could be done? And now it seems like the landowner has gone to the Historic District Commission and gotten permission to do this, and I'm wondering if he's going a little faster without getting our permission.
Well, no, he's actually been pretty good about keeping us informed, I'd say. And so I'm just giving you the update on where it stands, and if you're ready to do a more in-depth review.
Yeah,
So-
I mean, I am not in favor of this at all. You have the Downtown Improvement Project, the second phase, which is planned to come from Union Street down through, School Street and going out Bridge Street. And some of those buildings, all the buildings that would be talking about would be in that area. So does that mean that we would put the Downtown Improvement Project would need to put in pavers, or would they put in concrete sidewalks that would, butt up to his pavers?
I think to your point, and what we're all trying to get to, is it would be good to hear the comprehensive review of all the people from planning to downtown improvement to historic commission, to hear back from everybody to understand the strategy that they see with this, so it's not just a one-off. And I certainly would want to hear from those groups before we support it. Not saying that I wouldn't, but I want to understand their plan and sort of what their goals are. And the impacts, because it does impact, we're going to change stuff, so.
An entirely different take is that it could be perceived as extremely inconsistent on the part of the town to rule fairly strictly on signage and all of a sudden allow someone to tear up the sidewalk.
Mm-hmm.
So if I were a couple of the enterprises in town that have been before this group, who've been, seem to be exacerbated at points, I can only imagine their reaction if they saw that somebody was able to go and literally change the look of the town. When the look of the town was the premise for not allowing certain signage. So just as a principled point, I'm not agreeing with any side, I'm just saying as a point of principle, it seems problematic.
Yeah.
Just historically speaking, I think the only decision that the board has made in the 12 years I've been on the board was to allow Mr. Brox to put in granite curbstone in front of his house on Harbor Street when Harbor Street was being paved. Everybody else has the compressed asphalt, and that's the only time I can remember something like that being done.
I would think, following a review, if we did look to move forward with something like this, we would certainly be wanting to get some community input. Because it would be, if the community input were massively negative at the end of it, it's our doorstep that is going to be laid on.
But not to belabor it, but it does trigger another question for me, which is the strategy that some of the larger retail property owners have. On a personal note, just having been at some of the local businesses, there seems to be a lot of stress in the air right now. One shop is apparently closing in January. There's a vacancy where Floyd's used to be. It's been there for quite a long time. The business next door, I've heard, is struggling, and it's barely out of the gate. This is a different topic, but it's related, and it's relevant to the discussion about the look and the feel of the downtown and the businesses in there. But I don't know whether it's part of the strategic plan, but I'm interested in a temperature check on the small business
Yep.
happiness and survival outlook right now.
I think that's reasonable.
And we've had.
In addition to Superfine, like I understand it's a water problem, but I also know that they're under a lot of strain, and I want these businesses to do well.
We have had we've had the businesses in.
Mr. Chairman?
And it's a follow-up, so.
Yes, Adele?
On that subject of businesses and so forth, I don't know the name of this gentleman who's doing all of this, returning buildings to their original status. But he's putting a lot of businesses out of business because he's raised the rents so high they can't afford to rent the places. I don't know what you can do about that, but if he keeps on buying these buildings and revamping them and then making them so they can't be sold to be, or rented to businesses, we're in trouble.
Okay.
Enough on
Good
sidewalks?
feedback, yep, good feedback. No, that's what we need to have.
Yep.
What else here?
Donation.
So I don't have the actual paperwork for that anonymous donation. But I know that the person was anxious for it to be accepted before the close of the year. So if you're comfortable with approving pending receipt of the formal letter, I think that would be beneficial. So this is an anonymous donor who would like to contribute funds to pay for our local match of the new COA vehicles. So we have a state grant, but there's a 20% match, and the person would like to fund that, as well as funding a stair chair for the ambulance operation.
So that would be donations to two separate accounts. Would it be two separate actual donations or one donation?
We would split the one donation up into two accounts.
Okay.
So would you like a motion to accept the donation of $27,000 to be used for?
Plus or minus?
Yeah, okay, all right, okay.
Yes.
All right, So I'll make a motion that the Board of Selectmen move to accept the donation of $27,000 plus or minus for the town match for the 2 new Council on Aging vehicles and the stair chair for the ambulance operations.
With the required paperwork being finalized.
Thank you. I'll accept that as a friendly amendment.
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And obviously, when this comes through, it would be lovely to be able to give an anonymous person a letter of thanks. However, we may achieve that.
Yes. Two last things. One, we after quite a bit of delay, we do have a proposed contract from Comcast with the side letter that we were seeking, detailing in more specificity how service is extended to neighborhoods that currently do not have service. It was missing 2 things that I was hoping it would have, specifying that there would be no markup in the contractor's price, and that the property owners could receive a copy of the contractor's proposal. So I have not heard back from Comcast about those 2 items, adding it, so I think it's worth waiting. And I hope to have that ready for you for your meeting on the 8th.
So as I recall, the specific thing the resident who was with us was concerned about is he wanted to be able to find out what those costs were. That was his big thing.
Right.
Is that in the current side letter, or is that still not there?
It is not in there specifically. So, they say, yes, it'll cost you this much, but they're not promising to show the details of that. I think that's what we need.
Right.
Yeah.
So Comcast is giving the total cost, but not breaking it down, so you find out that the contractor is getting paid so much, and Comcast is marking it up 20% because it's going through their books or something.
But they haven't said that they mark up, but I would like to see that spelled out.
I'd like to see it in writing that they don't.
Right. So, assuming that is your druthers, then we will keep pushing for that.
Mhm.
Lastly, Susan and I have been talking about being able to take advantage of some of her expertise in organizational management and function, and starting in on some meetings with department leaders and taking the temperature of how they feel about how they function as a group in ways that we can better structure how we operate and form a stronger team effort. So, FYI, stay tuned. We'll have more on that as that develops. So that'll conclude my report.
All right, anybody else have any other items that that have not been discussed so far tonight? All right, well then I am going to move that we move to executive session for reason number 3 to discuss, not to return to open session, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, and the chair so declares.
Second.
A roll call, yes, second from Mr. Kehoe, and a real roll call vote, Mr. Steinert.
Aye.
Ms. Beckman.
Yes.
Mr. Bowling, yes. Ms.
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Kehoe.
Yes.